Hello, my name is Dr. Trapp. I teach in the Political Science Department here at Methodist University. And tonight we're having a forum on issues related to the upcoming election. And just to give you a brief overview, this is an outgrowth of an initiative that was started by Dr. Castro and some other faculty members about raising the awareness of the issues and encouraging our student body to go out and vote. We have two speakers tonight who are going to talk about the issues related to the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. And on my right, we have Wade Fowler, who represents District 8 of the Fayetteville City Council. He's actually a Fayetteville native. He was a graduate of Terry Sanford High School. And he left Fayetteville and served in the U.S. Air Force and flew fighter pilots. Am I correct?
U.S. Tactical Reconnaissance.
Okay. And then he worked for Pfizer Pharmaceuticals until his retirement and has since been involved in public life and is now serving on. And you did run for state senator.
And I lost to him.
You lost to him. So that kind of gives you a background. So it's kind of repeat. They're debating each other tonight.
We've been in this position before.
Thank you for coming today. And then we have Senator Eric Mansfield, who is a physician. You're an orthologist? Yes, okay. But now serves as a Democratic member of the state Senate, representing the 21st District of the state Senate. And he sought the nomination this year for Lieutenant Governor and was unsuccessful, but will maybe try in the future again. We're going to allow each speaker up to 8 minutes to summarize what they think are the important issues facing the country today, and in particular, issues that U.S. students would be interested in and might have an impact on your decision on how you would vote for either candidate.
I'm excited because you all actually want to do something like this and to learn more about how we elect our officials, in particular our president. As has been said, I am not an official member of the White House, or nor am I going to make statements on behalf of the president, but just from my own view, what I think is important to the president and what's important to you all. It's obviously the economy, which it always has been and always will be. It's the economy, it's the economy, it's the economy. And where do we go from here? And right now we have a $16 trillion debt. We have high unemployment, and the economy is not growing as fast as any of us would like for it to. But I do believe that where we are as a nation, we just did not get here. That the $16 trillion debt that we had did not come under President Obama, which has only added $1.4 trillion to the debt. The $7.7 trillion of the debt came to the president before him. That came for basically two reasons. One reason was the tax cuts for the most wealthy of our nation, which is about $3.3 trillion, and then the other $3.5 trillion came from the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. Now, how do we go forward from that point? Because my generation will pay for some of that debt, but your generation will pay for an overwhelming large amount of that debt. Specifically, in the next 10 years, that debt will increase approximately $20 trillion. And 50% of that will be from two very specific reasons, which are tax cuts for the wealthy and for the payment of a war of Iraq and Afghanistan. And this president's position going forward has been to cut $5 trillion from that debt and try to do it in a very bipartisan way. However, unfortunately, because of the acrimony that's within both parties, whether Democrat or Republican, it seems like neither party can come together to push an agenda forward. The president could not push his agenda forward. And so here we are stuck, where we have an economy which is sluggishly moving forward, which we have jobs being created, and we've had positive job growth for the last 30 months, but nowhere near what we'd like to see. 4 years ago, if you look at where we were 4 years ago, where we were losing 800,000 jobs per month, our Dow Jones was at 6,000. Now our Dow Jones is at 13,000. And we're creating about 200,000 jobs a month. And so we're going forward, but not as fast as we want to go. And so I believe the president's primary goal, particularly moving forward, is to create an economy that can get people back to work, that can get college students jobs once they leave here. I do believe that the president is interested in college students. He has funded the Pell Grant and has increased rates of the Pell Grant, which when I went to college on partial scholarship from ROTC, but from the other part I got from Pell Grant. He's also decreased the amount of interest on student loans, which when I was in medical school, the interest rate for student loans from 8.5% to 21%. And so I believe that this president does really care about students and making an America that's open for students. My final point, and we can, nice reason. My final point going forward is I believe that this president really cares about our nation as a whole. I think one of the things that worries me is that we're becoming a nation that is divided among money, whether or not you have money or you don't have money. And there's been this increasing sense that all of us who have made it, those of us who have made it, we've done it on our own. And we pulled up our own bootstraps, that we became great CEOs, we became great business people because we did it all by ourselves with no help from anyone else. And that is just not how we've ever been as a country. Our country has never led from the top down, it's always grown from the bottom up. That we always believe that we as a country are in this thing together. No matter where you're from, whether you're from Idaho or Georgia or North Carolina, California, whether you're rich or poor, but somehow we're in this together. And I believe that's when our founders got together and they wrote the Constitution. They said, we the people. They didn't say me, myself, but they say we the people, we of the United States move together. And I believe this president believes that we are a better nation because we do things together and that we fight for each other. He does not believe that we are separate. And we need to develop a country. And I believe in those lyrics that says that this land was made for you and me. It really means that this country was made not just for the wealthy of Massachusetts, but it was also made for the waitress in Mississippi. That it was not just made for the CEO of the banks, but it was also made for the cook at Burger King. That whether or not you're wealthy or you're poor, whether you're rich or you have no money at all, that just because you're American, you have the same opportunity that anyone else. You have the same opportunity to be great, you have the same opportunity to go to college, and you have the same opportunity to be the President of the United States. And I believe that's the greatest thing that this president talks about, is this hope of America, that this imperfect union, that just being born within these borders give you the opportunity to be great.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And Senator Mansfield, thanks for being here. Dr. Trapp, thank you for the opportunity. And thank you guys for being here. I also especially want to point out a friend of mine, Pastor Mark Rowden over here, who was sacrificing the Cowboys game to be here tonight. So it tells you how important this is. First of all, again, just to reiterate, I am not an official spokesperson for the Romney campaign or for the Republican Party. I am a registered Republican. However, I do serve in a body that is elected in a nonpartisan fashion. So I want to do that. I want to apologize to the Romney campaign because I am up against a skilled orator and I am not. So you'll just have to bear with me as we go through this. But a couple of the points that you wanted to mention. Clearly, you have two different candidates that are running. And in our society today, normally what happens is one side says the other side doesn't care about you, and the other side says, no, they don't care about you. I would say that both sides care about our country. There's two different distinct viewpoints as what's best for the people in our country. And these are some of the things that you need to look at. And to reference the economy first, which was one of the topics that we were told about, and the debt that we have, there has been some discussion, and I'll give you the details if you'd like, out of by the way, the Washington Post, which is not known to be a conservative editorial board, that wrote in comments about how much debt came from whom, and that a good deal of what we're seeing in the debt that we have as an increase comes from our current administration. But neither here nor there on that. The issue really is, how do we move ahead? How do we move ahead? The scenario was laid out for you. Unemployment has been over 8% for, I think it's what, coming up on 40 months now, if not a little bit more than that. You're going to be graduating from college looking for a job. And I tried to do my best as I present this to you to go to Mitt Romney's website and to read. He has a 152-page treatise there on how he would make things happen. And my recommendation to you is go and read through that. Do some study. Don't go by commercials on how you vote. Study up on your candidates. Study both of them before you make your decision. But the issue with resolving the debt, I will tell you that the position that Mitt Romney promotes is what's called cut, cap, and balance. Cut a lot of the non-discretionary, the discretionary spending that we have, and then cap the spending of our state, of our government to no more than 20% of GDP. You know, what happens then is that means that when you have a downturn in the economy, that means some of your government spending is going to go down as well. But there have only been two. Now, he listed on his website were only the Democrat presidents, so I didn't have a chance to see what it was under the Republicans. I'm going to give you that caveat. But out of the Democrat presidents since Lyndon Johnson, there have only been two presidents who have had their spending as a part of the GDP exceed 20%. That was Jimmy Carter at 20.4 and President Obama at 24.3. So spending as a part of GDP is high. Why does that matter to you as a student? First of all, you guys are talking about loans. Everybody's talking about getting loans. When the government is borrowing a load of money, they are competing with private enterprise that wants to borrow money as well. That creates a problem for you to be able to find money to do some of the things you want to do. Ask people right now in the mortgage business how hard it is for somebody to get a loan to buy a house. Those kind of things, buying houses and those kind of things are the things that improve our economy. And so that is a steep concern. And one way to do that is to keep our spending in check. You can take all the taxes on the rich people you want. You can take 100% of the income of people above $250,000 in the United States, and it will not pay for this country for a year. It won't even fully reduce the deficit that we have. So the point is, if you look at what the discussion is right now on the issue about whether or not they call them the Bush-era tax cuts, which by the way had to be passed by Congress as well. If those are lifted solely on the rich, what you're saying is you still think tax cuts work because the vast majority of the people in our country are not rich. They're going to keep those tax cuts. I don't know how many of you in here consider yourself rich, but if you pay less taxes, I'm sure you'd like to do that. Well, most people in our country would. And having the capital available to reinvest makes more sense than to spend it simply on government programs. So that's one of the viewpoints that looks different. We're trying to have a policy that would encourage people to invest more money in companies that create jobs. Because guess what? Before you can have a job, you have to have a company to work for. Either that or start your own. And I've got some figures I'll be glad to give to you later on in the question and answer about a recent survey of small business owners in manufacturing and other small businesses and their view of what's happening with the economy and whether or not they anticipate expanding jobs. And right now, with the unemployment rate the way it is, you guys are going to have fun looking for a job out there. So we'd like for you to think about that. When it comes to the college funding, certainly everybody would like to go to college. There are multiple things to be used, and there's a white paper that Mr. Romney has written out about education, not just college, but also K through 12 as well. But on the college issue, a couple of things there is to make loans, to look for affordable loans, but also to free it back up to where you can go to the private sector for loans, which you can't do right now, which would provide you some competition and allow you to have lower rate loans. So that's another option there as well for you as a student. And then the question you got to ask yourself is this. And I want you to think about this, and this is the overriding difference in the philosophy I think you would see between the two parties. It seems to say that when you will work hard for yourself, that we're not working together as a team. Now, I don't know if anybody in here is a music major or not, but when you look at a musical composition, particularly when you look at the harmony, there are a whole lot of different notes. They are individual notes that work individually. They sound a little bit different from the one they're next to, but together, they make the whole piece come together. And see, that's the view that we have of America. That we have a whole lot of different cultures. We have a whole lot of different people that are working together, even though they're separate individuals and they're working for themselves in a sense, they're going to lift the others next to them because an individual who seeks to succeed and start a business, and I've got some comments here from the gentleman that started Sun Microsystems. He started as a small business with 4 employees, 4 people. Corporations are people. I think Mr. Romney was accused of having lost his mind and saying corporations are people. Corporations are people. I worked for one, and I'm a person. He started with 4, and he built it to a company that hired 40,000. You know what? He became wealthy along the way. And what he did with his money was reinvest it to help build jobs for more people so that they could then, in turn, become wealthy themselves. I will ask you this. How many of you here now, as far as shared responsibility to be a team player, if you worked hard for an A, would give a letter grade away to a student who had a D so that they could have a better GPA because, you know, your A was more than good enough. It's not as much, you know, you didn't need that to graduate. You see, you're here working individually. But the way you work individually here, as you work and prosper here as students and do well, guess what that does for the university? It increases the stature of the university, makes more people want to come here, which makes more tuition available, which makes you able to have more programs. And that's what we believe in following. So I think I'm about out of time.
My name is Dillian Chance Meacham. I'm a first-year student here, majoring in biology. I think in our pre-med. I would like to know what is each of the candidates' positions on outsourcing?
Okay, and what we'll do is, I think the way to answer the question, we'll let Mr. Fowler go first, and then Senator Mansfield go second, and then we'll kind of reverse it around. That'd be, I think, a fair way to do it, and that we're not playing favoritism with anybody. So, Wade, would you like to answer it first?
Sure. I'm not sure I can adequately, accurately say what Mr. Romney's position is on outsourcing. However, I would say that outsourcing is one of those things that does have value when it's done properly, but sometimes it can be done where you are sending for the wrong reason. But most of the reason we have outsourcing has to do primarily, and I'll just say this, I think, with excessive labor costs. If you look at the loss of manufacturing jobs in America, in other words, ones that have been outsourced, primarily the number of private sector jobs that have been lost have been union manufacturing jobs simply because of the cost. The number of non-union manufacturing jobs in America has stayed steady or slightly grown.
Okay, very good. Okay, Senator Mansfield.
Well, that's, what he said is partially true and partially not true. This president does not believe in outsourcing as an economic engine. Certainly, when you look at what has happened to the Southeast, particularly the state of North Carolina, a large reason why we have such high unemployment in North Carolina is many of our jobs left with the NAFTA agreements and other agreements with China and Southeast Asia. And because we gave tax breaks to many of those companies to allow them to go to offshore and to send jobs away from this country, this president believes that if you're going to get tax breaks from this government, you should be getting tax breaks for bringing your businesses and your jobs back to America. And which is something I've always agreed with. I still believe that the American worker is the smartest, most intuitive and innovative worker that there is in the world. And I think I went to China in November, and many of the same companies who gripe about healthcare insurance and doing the things that America asks of their large companies to do, they were not doing them in China. They had large numbers of people who were working for American companies who did not have health care, and they were not paying for their health care, partly because China picked up the tab. But the other part of it, they were not offering any of those benefits to even Americans who were working there. And so I would say that I agree with the president in saying, look, every job that we can keep within the United States, we should keep within the United States, and we should be giving large tax breaks to those companies who will bring those jobs back to the U.S. One of the problems is that, for instance, solar. I'm sorry.
I'm going to go back. Give 15 seconds.
When you look at solar panels, the Chinese have basically cornered the market on solar panels using technology from the United States because it was outsourced over there. One of the things about the Chinese government, the Chinese government will tell you, well, yeah, you can come to our country, and you can stay there as long as you want to, until suddenly they say, we like your company. We'd like to have more than half of your company, and they kind of take it over.
Okay. Councilman Fowler asked if he could give a brief rebuttal. I don't know if the audience would be against that, maybe for like 25 seconds or so.
Whoever gets first should respond for it.
Are you comfortable with that? Okay.
Just because I was told I was saying something that was half true.
Okay, well, we'll keep it very short then, and then we'll move on to the next question. Okay?
But I just wanted to respond to the issue, by the way, of why capital stays overseas. The United States currently uses what's called a worldwide taxation system. We're the only OECD country that has a tax rate above 30% that does this. And what that means is that if you have a company that's based in the United States that earns earnings overseas, they earn earnings overseas in a lower tax-based country. If they bring those earnings back to the states, they are taxed additionally at the United States tax rate. That discourages them from bringing capital back here to invest in jobs over here. And that's the part that makes outsourcing for these companies sometimes make sense.
Yeah,
but the issue is they've got to you know, you gotta let the taxes, you gotta let them earn the lower taxes.
We'll give you 45 seconds.
No, I don't need it, because that was invented. The reason why that came about was because companies were taking all of their earnings offshore and hiding them from American taxes. And so that's, I mean, that's part of the problem. Like one of our presidential candidates has these offshore accounts, which are not taxable, even though you made the money in the United States. I mean, to me, if we're going to talk about taxes, it's not fair for those who make above $1 million, with an average of pay 18.9% as an average, when a guy who makes under $250,000 is going to pay 35.6%. I don't think that's fair. So that's why that measure came to be, to force them to bring their tax money back to the country.
As far as LGBT rights and marriage equality go, what is the main reason either for or against its support?
Okay, let you go.
Well, as you've watched, the president's debate within himself has evolved. And so now he's to the point where he says that it is now a civil right and that marriage equality should be granted. However, he's not making a federal push because he still believes in states' rights and the right of each state to form their own opinion. But he principally believes that marriage equality is a civil right. Even against some of the disagreements within his own party about that, because he fundamentally believes, which I believe, that if we elected him to be the president of the United States, not the pastor of the United States, and so that's why he believes that in civil rights, that this is a civil right. So he believes in marriage equality.
Very good.
Again, I'm going from Governor Romney's website, is that he is in favor of traditional marriage for individuals, and that it's one man, one woman, and that is the building block for society as it has been through history. Now, does that mean that he does not believe that gays should be able to live together, have a contract together? No, as I understand it from his website. The concern, and I will now not speak for him, I will just speak for those who follow the philosophy I do. And I was probably more libertarian on this. I am a believer, I'm a Christian believer, and I believe that marriage was instituted by God between a man and a woman. And so therefore, whatever government calls it doesn't matter, it's what God calls it. And so therefore, it shouldn't matter from the libertarian viewpoint whether it should. But unfortunately, what happens when we advocate for that role that we believe, that government starts to step in and say, well, now, this is the way your religious organization should handle this, and takes it out and then begins to step on religious liberty. And that's the concern for a lot of people from, if you will, from my side, is that that you give up your religious liberty because the government will force you then to recognize that which your religion doesn't recognize.
That has never been stated by the federal government, that they would require any religion to marry anyone. It's fundamentally that's what we believe as Americans. There's never been one single person from the federal level in President Obama's cabinet that's ever said that they want to dictate who Baptists marry, who Church of God in Christ marry. They leave that all up to each individual religion.
Well, I think there are cases of it, but I will tell you, not from a federal level, from a state level. Certainly in California, there was a Methodist church that did not want to rent out its facility for a gay marriage. They had a pavilion on the beach, and were told they must do so by the government.
Very good. All right, our next question. Yes, go ahead.
My name is Kelly Twiddell, and I know Methodist University is a big military supporter in our community. They have the Yellow Ribbon program and the ROTC program, and a lot of people might be connected to the military somehow here. What can you say about each party's stance on what they've been doing, what they plan to do for military families and the military?
The question was if you didn't hear it, the question was what does each side say about military and military families and what they do for them? I don't have any specifics on that. I will tell you, having served in the military, Senator Mansfield's also served in the military. I would sense that you would see that both sides of the House would want to ensure that we have a strong, active military that has the tools that it needs to do what it needs to do, and that we would take care of those. Now, I will tell you, there is, you have to take care of the individuals under the agreements that you make. You need to let them, you need to live up to your obligations. And frankly, I don't know. I don't know if I can say that either side would not want to do that.
Well, I will tell you, my wife was here in the back when they were campaigning as Senator Obama. My wife put together an event for the spouses of military veterans, and with First Lady Michelle Obama, who actually came down. Her very first event for military spouses was here in Fayetteville, and since then she has increased that and made it even more broad to the point where it is her main agenda item to go across the country to make sure that the military families are well taken care of. The President's initiative which asked for companies to go out and hire veterans to receive tax breaks initially from $4,900 to $9,400, depending on what type of veteran we were. They set a goal to get 100,000 people in 2 years, I believe it was, and they've already reached 130,000 vets employed within 1 year. For the first time in this country's history, the unemployment rate for veterans is equal to that the national unemployment rate. He's also increased the funding for the Veterans Administration in double digits for the first time. Any president has done that for every year that he's been in the White House. And so the president understands, just as most of us who are in medicine understand, that once the war is over in Iraq and once the war is closed in 2014 in Afghanistan, the real hard work begins with us as America trying to help our fellow Americans become more acclimated back to society. What we're going to see here in Cumberland County is that a large group of people come back who they may have their limbs, but their minds are still not right. And so we as North Carolinians, and certainly we as those in Cumberland County, are going to really have to work hard to make sure we embrace all of our fellow soldiers who come back. And I think the President's message thus far has been, this country loves you, and this country will be there for you, and we got you back.
Very good. Okay, who else? Chris?
Senator Mansfield, let's go back to the debt and the deficit.
Sure.
I believe you said it was 1.3 trillion. What was the number that you cited?
What was the debt? 16 trillion.
16 trillion. What was the number you cited under President Obama?
1.4 trillion.
1.4 trillion. Now, this year alone, President Obama has added 1.3 trillion to the national deficit.
Let's get the question.
Yeah.
Get the question and then go.
What I'd like to know is how do both parties plan on addressing fiscal responsibility? $16 trillion in debt and rising. We'll get to a point where we can't pay off our loans.
Okay.
Right. Well, someone said we're already there. And I totally agree with you. I think fiscal responsibility is certainly the order of the day. But I think this president, based on his website and stuff that I read, this president put forth a $5.1 trillion reduction in the budget going forward. $3.3 trillion of that will come from the 2% of the people who are the wealthiest in this country, which is the same thing that President Clinton did. And when President Clinton was president, the inflation rate went from 3.3% to 1.7%. The unemployment rate dropped by a full percentage point. And as far as debt to GDP ratio, it was one of the lowest in the history of our country. And so if we just peel back to those same measures, we can cut off $3.3 to $3.7 trillion worth of debt going forward without doing anything else. Further within that package was to cut the defense budget, which many have heard. And unfortunately, this became a political hot potato where people were trying to point fingers and say they're trying to cut the defense budget at the expense of national security. But it wasn't. The very things that he looked at was, one, the M1 Abrams take program, which the days of us lining across the field from our enemy and going across the field with tanks, those days are all over because we now fight terrorists in small places. We don't even use M1 Abrams on the battlefield anymore. So they're going to cut that program. They're going to cut the B-1 bomber program, which we're not using anymore. And so these were the same $1 trillion, which led up to a $5.1 trillion debt reduction. Going forward, I think the president wants to make even more cuts in the debt, but he has also had the economy to come back. But unfortunately, in Congress, there's this battle not to cut taxes, not to raise taxes to anyone at any point, and that's kind of where we are in this gridlock.
Thank you. Okay, Councilman Ballard.
Okay, well, to speak to the point of President Clinton's presidency, the time when those numbers turned around for him was once the Republicans were elected midway through his first term. That's when the numbers started turning to the positive side.
All right, good debate.
All right. A little while ago, I was accused of giving half-truths. Now I'm being accused of giving full falsehoods, so I appreciate that. I'm going to read from the Washington Post about the occurrence about the debt. The Washington Post is not a Republican-leaning paper. It talks about President Obama's remarks that only 10% of the debt is his responsibility. This is from the Washington Post. It says, President Obama in his remarks doesn't really say he's talking about the disappearance of the surplus. In fact, he prefaces his statement with a misleading phrase, over the last 4 years, which suggests he is only talking about the period in which he was president. Because of compounding, however, the Treasury Department chart that he used overemphasizes the impact of the events that happened early in the process, in quotation marks, such as the Bush tax cuts, and minimizes more recent events, such as President Obama's policies. Under this theory, one could go back to the Lyndon Johnson administration and blame him for a huge chunk of the deficit since he signed Medicare and Medicaid into law. In other words, every old policy will almost by definition appear to contribute much more to current deficits than recent policies. As can be seen in the chart above, you can't see the chart on this thing, CBO's errors, which by the way, again, the $5 billion, the $5 trillion in cuts and all that stuff comes off of CBO projections. CBO missed it big time. CBO's errors in forecasting played a large role in the demise of the projected surpluses. CBO had kept counting on a gusher of capital gains revenue and then obviously failed to predict the recession of 2008. And basically what they said here is that the 2009 fiscal year, it gives you 40%. Have I run out of time? All right.
Would you like to have a rebuttal and I'll go back?
He gave 4 Pinocchios.
Yeah, well, I just want to say, because the Republicans always tend to do this, whenever you talk about Clinton, they always say, well, it was because of the Republican Congress, but the Republican Congress did not come into 5 years after President Clinton started making those same cuts. And so you can't say it was Republican Congress if it was 5 years after he started doing the things to increase the economy. And the other problem, if you talk about the debt, President Clinton left President Bush $257 billion surplus that then turned into a $4 trillion deficit by the time he left office. And so where does that debt go? Where did that debt become? That debt became the next president's debt. So it's a little bit a superficial argument to say we have to go all the way back to the balance sheet. That's the same argument. I'm just saying let's look at the 2 presidents in the last 12 years.
I'm just saying what the Washington Post said.
I'm just saying what the policy is.
All right, very good. All right, next question, please.
It's a great question.
How about on this side right here in the back? Yes, tell me where you're from.
Philip Lazarevich.
Stand up, please, and talk loud. Everybody be quiet.
I'm Philip Lazarevich from Bosnia, and I would like to shift the conversation towards foreign policy. To be more precise, what's going on with Guantanamo Bay, which was promised to be closed in May last year, if I recall correctly, and what's going to happen with Afghanistan in the future.
I'm losing track now. I get a bad moderator.
Yeah, I didn't know.
Yeah, you. Yeah, that's right. I remember.
You'll have to ask President. You'll have
Put
to
this
ask
man right
President.
here now. So.
You'll have to ask President Obama why he didn't close it. That was his promise. I don't have an answer for you.
Okay.
Well, that's,
That's your man.
I agree. I think obviously some things that you say on the campaign trail, once you get into office, you find out there's some things are different. And I think that he felt it was a national security risk to allow some of those people to leave. Because I think once you get into office, you find out more information. So I think the Guantanamo Bay specifically is that the president found out more information. He found out there was a higher security risk of closing it than he thought, and so that's why he's left it intact. And again, much to the chagrin of the far left within his own party. When it comes to Afghanistan, we should be out of Afghanistan in 2014, which is a hard date. And when you look at our mission there right now, one of the problems with going into Iraq, one of the problems going into Afghanistan, this was said by General Colin Powell. General Colin Powell said before we went into either one of those, said, you go in there, you must have a strategy to exit. And unfortunately, we went in and did not have a strategy to exit either one of those battles. Fortunately, we got out of Iraq, this is a President promised, and now we're going to get out of Afghanistan. I don't think that the United States can continue to be the police force for the world. And I think the President feels that way. I think he has allowed each country to be sovereign and to develop their own democracy within themselves. But what we're doing in Afghanistan, I think if you look at almost every public poll now, the majority of Americans want our troops home, so that there can be some nation building within our own country.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, next question, please. This gentleman right here, and I'll get you next. Okay. Stand up, everybody clap, please. Take your name.
Dan Nishi, I'm from Seattle, psychology major. We've been talking about the debt, and according to the website for the Department of the Treasury, over 40% of our national debt is owed to the Federal Reserve. I'd just like to hear both sides' opinion on who owns the Federal Reserve first, and what is their role in the economy.
Federal Reserve is a quasi relationship between the federal government and the banking system in the United States. Although we have some jurisdiction over it, the Federal Reserve has a lot of liberty to set currency rates and to do some things that are federal. There's been a big push by many who believe that the banking system is out of hand to have more clarity in the Federal Reserve System. However, neither Congress or the executive branch or the President has moved on.
Yes.
Okay, and again, I can't speak for Governor Romney's side on this, but I will. The Federal Reserve, as I said, is sort of like a quasi-governmental agency. It's run by a board of governors who were appointed, but they're separate. It's kind of like PwC is owned by the city of Fayetteville, but the board runs their own shows, sort of. What's going on right now with QE3 or quantitative easing 3 is that the Federal Reserve has decided that it's now going to purchase, I think it's about $40 billion a month of mortgage-backed assets, which basically, let me tell you what that does. That puts more money into the economy. It basically it's increasing the money supply. And if you increase the money supply, you increase the value of that money. So your dollar is going to continue to get weaker based off that, in my opinion. This is strictly my opinion, okay? I'm not going to speak for the party or anybody else. But it is in essence a tax on you because your dollars become worth less. And as they become worth less, obviously you can buy fewer things with them. A little bit of the idea for stimulus spending, and both presidents, President Bush and President Obama, have done some stimulus spending. To me, it's like you got a half-full bathtub and you take water from the front of it and pour it in the back of it and you think you're going to fill your bathtub. It's not going to create wealth. It's actually investment that's going to create wealth and generate a bigger economy.
Thank you very much. Okay. Where are you from?
I'm from Fort Myers, Florida.
Okay.
And my question is what are the top 3 issues that you would address to both parties and how it would affect us?
Are you okay? So which one would I recommend? What are the top 3 issues that I would say personally? Okay, and not speaking for the party, I just want to make sure we're clear on that. First of all is that the economy is the #1 thing, and you cannot continue to spend money you do not have. And I realize there's talk about whether or not you can talk about some, all kinds of things, that if you lower taxes, the revenue goes up. That has happened in virtually every time that you've seen it. Dynamic scoring is really important to decide what happens in your economy, not static. The CBO uses static scoring, which means that if you assume that somebody's behavior is going to stay the same regardless of what happens with what you do with, taxation rates. And honestly, that doesn't happen. People, come on folks, look at our tax code. Everybody that has a chance to take a deduction will. So they're going to figure ways around it. So you got to look at the dynamics of it. The biggest issue for us is we're spending a heck of a lot more money than we have. And you have to look in the mirror and say, how long am I willing to do that? And for you guys, really what you need to do is look in the mirror and say, how long am I going to let my parents spend my future? That's the most important question I think you can ask. How long am I going to let my parents spend my future? Because that's what we're doing. And then the other thing is, and this comes to the moral side, it comes back a little bit to your question on there, and that has to do with the family unit. This is me speaking. I want to make sure I'm very clear on this. This is me speaking, not for anybody else. But the family unit is the core of our society. We currently have 40% of children born in America are born to unwed mothers. 40% of children born in America are born to unwed mothers. One of the greatest things that points to poverty is a single-parent household right from the get-go. That creates a problem for our economy. Okay, I've got 15 seconds left. So personally for me, that's a real issue. And then the third one would be national defense and making sure that we have a good, strong foreign policy.
Great questions. And speaking for myself, I agree with the economy. I believe we have two different viewpoints on how we address that. Within our basic budget, 20% of it goes to Medicare and Medicaid, 20% of it goes to Social Security, and 20% goes to defense. All the discretionary stuff that people talk about, which this Congress went to talk about social issues and the problems with all these social issues, make up less than 12% of our federal budget. So even had we corrected all those things, we still wouldn't address the 60% of the budget, which no one wants to talk about. I agree. We have to quit spending more, and we have to start saving more, and we have to develop programs that help everyone get an opportunity to do great things in this country. I don't disagree with that at all, and I think the way to get there is for both parties to finally quit being so party-specific and start being people-specific, and invest in two things: people and policy. I think neither party has done well with working on great policies or doing what's best for the American people. I think they've unfortunately begun to do what's best for both of their parties. And the final thing, I think we as Americans have to get more involved with our politics. I take some, I certainly understand Councilman Fowler's single-parent household, and his statistics are right. They're even higher than African-American community and Latino community. But I'm from a single-parent household. I mean, I grew up with just my mom and my two sisters and my sister, and that was not a detriment to me because I had great people around me who made sure that I would succeed. I think we as a country have to quit the finger pointing and have to quit saying that the reason why you don't have this certain job is because of these people. The reason why you didn't get into this college is because of this person. The reason why our economy is not flowing is because of these people. And we have to start saying, what can we do as a country to get everybody an equal playing field? Not giving you a better playing field, not giving you an advantage, but just everybody become equal. And I think we have not done that in the country.
Good. Next question. Yes, this lady right here.
Krista, I'm a junior and I'm a social studies education major here.
What's your name again?
Krista.
Krista, okay.
My question actually kind of goes off what you just said and what you said earlier about if you made an A and someone makes a D, they're going to give your grade up. Is that the same if that person didn't have equal opportunity for using student analogy to the tutoring that person had to make an A, or to the one-on-one with the teacher to make an A? And how does that fall into play with our economy? And because my understanding is that the party right now in office is trying to make an equal opportunity playing field. So does that still play on the field if that student didn't get the same opportunities to learn if we're talking about the economy?
Well, I think it's a great point and a great question. And that analogy to me is a bogus analogy because when we talk about grades, you're right. You're right. No one is going to say, hey, I made an A and I'm going to give you my A because you made a D. And that's not what we're asking for. And And I've actually gotten tired of people beginning to say that those of us who grew up poor are envious of those who grew up rich, and that those who made great businesses, that this country, and we should be beholden to those people who are the job creators, because it makes a class system of the job creators who are okay and we should be proud of, and then the rest of us. My mother never told me to, son, grow up and have great riches, but she did tell me to grow up and have a rich life. What she told me was it doesn't matter the house you live in, but it's what lives inside of you. It's not the car that you drive, but what drives you. And what we should do as a country is to make sure that everyone has the same opportunity, but they also have the same value. That you're no more valuable because you're CEO or whether you're the cook, because you're an American citizen and you have value because you're an American citizen. It's not because of your clothes, but it's your integrity and your character. We as a country must quit looking at people based on their clothes and their car and their houses and their job title, and start looking at people that you are an American, you have the same right, you have the same opportunity, and freedom is for everyone. Not for just certain zip codes, but it's for every single person in this country. And so I have some problem with this continuing monologue that people talk about, hey, the job creators, they're so important. Well, no, every person is important. When you walk into my office to see me as a ear, nose, and throat physician, if my front person doesn't check you in correctly, or if my front person says something horrible to you and you walk out of the office, I'll never know it because I won't see you. But every person within my office, from the person who cleans up after we finish at nighttime to the last person who checks you out, is important to me in my office, and it's the same way within our country.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Okay, well, in response to that, first of all, I don't think it's bogus, but the second thing is that Dr. Mansfield is actually indicative of what I've been talking about. It's called upward mobility in our country. Dr. Mansfield started that for it. Now, I would say that generally, I would say, if you look at the numbers and solely at the numbers, you're an exception rather than the rule when it comes to the single parent family. And I'm so glad it worked out for you and that you did well because you've got a lot of drive. And you are a job creator. You hire a lot of people for your business. And then I don't think that makes you better than me. I don't own a business. As a matter of fact, you make a heck of a lot more money than I do. I don't begrudge you your money. As a matter of fact, I'm glad you make it. I wish more people would have the opportunity to do that. Now, the difference is when you compare equal outcome to equal opportunity. Everybody in here has the same opportunity in this school right now. With the classes you have, you have the same professors, you sit in the same class, you can do well or not do well. That's your choice, and that's your work. This was a country built on hard work and upward mobility from somebody like the guy that started Sun Microsystems with 4 people and ended up hiring 40,000. He doesn't hold himself up as a god. He holds himself up as an employer who gave other people an opportunity to learn from what they did working for him to create their own path towards wealth or middle class or whatever. Our middle class is not something that people shoot for. Our low class is not something people shoot for. Most people in this country wish at some point in time they could be in that upper level. And the whole point behind it is to try to give you the opportunity to reach there. Some of us will fail. Some of us will succeed. I failed at reaching the top level, guys. I'm not up there. You know, I'm not poor, but I'm not super wealthy. I'm quite content with what's happened with me in my life. I got to fly airplanes for 8.5 years. I got to fly 500 miles an hour, 250 feet off the ground. Let me tell you what, that was fun. And I got paid well for it. My life is a rich life because my parents raised me to understand that it is to work hard. And what we did for our children was to teach them there's dignity in any job well done. My son who cooks in a restaurant has a dignified job. My son who is a network engineer in Vienna, Austria has a dignified job. And my son who's a car mechanic at Okinawa is a dignified person. I'm not saying there's any less dignity because of what your stature is in life.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, but the problem is I have with this notion that those of us who want someone else's outcome when we didn't work for it. And the overwhelming majority of people that I grew up with never wanted to get something that they didn't work for. And that notion is being permeated by many people within your party who try to kind of cast this dispersion that there they go again, these people who want something for nothing, when the overwhelming majority of Americans just want an equal opportunity. And one example, you know, we always talk about Medicaid. Medicaid now, and there's this notion that Medicaid dollars are being sucked up by these continual mothers on welfare. When the numbers say that 80% of Medicaid is used by 17% of people, and those 17% are the elderly and the disabled. And the quote-unquote welfare mothers are less than 6%. And so this whole notion that, well, we want something for nothing is not a true notion.
Well, you know, you're going to hear arguments on these extreme, and I don't think you're there, and I certainly don't believe I'm there. But you will have from the other side that all corporations are evil, all they want to do is exploit your workers. And you know, folks, we are a country that's driven by the opportunity for people to get ahead, and individual freedom and the opportunity to get ahead is what we're about. So you'll have to figure out which side you want. That's why I said research. And do your research like you do for your studies. Study before you vote.
What's your name and where you're from?
I'm Charlie Benson. I'm a market maker, Phil Ferguson, President of Management here. I'm from Troy, North Carolina. And my question is, each candidate, what are they going to do to create jobs and better the economy? How are they going to create jobs? How are they going to get more jobs out there for us?
By the way, I'm a former pharmaceutical representative, and I called on doctors in Troy. So I'm well aware of where you're from. I would tell you that, and again, I feel confident speaking about this because I read it from the website, that Governor Romney's view is that the only kind of jobs that government can create are government jobs. When it comes to jobs in the private sector, those are the ones that companies and individuals and entrepreneurs start. And the way you do that is to relieve burdensome regulations from them, and also the issue of burdensome taxes. And that's, oh man, I got to get my eyeballs out so I can see, and I'm running out of my time. But this is a survey of manufacturing and small business owners through the National Association of Manufacturers and the National Federation of Independent Business. 67% say there's too much uncertainty in the market today to expand, grow, or hire new workers. 69% of small business owners and manufacturers say President Obama's executive branch and regulatory policies have hurt American small businesses and manufacturers. 55% say they would not start a business today given what they know now and in the current environment. And 54% say other countries like China and India are more supportive of their small businesses and manufacturers than the United States. That's just simply a survey taken of manufacturers and people who are hiring people. So listening to them might be a good idea.
Well, again, here are the facts. Since the president has been, in his particularly last 2 years, corporate profits have been the highest in the history of this country. $1.8 trillion of corporate profits in the last 2 years at a rate of 8.5% per year annualized. $1.8 trillion worth of corporate profits in the last 2 years, 8.5%. We've never had that steep in the history of our country. So their businesses making a lot of money, a ton of money. Well, the president's job bill was very specific, and very specific was trying to go back and to rebuild our infrastructure, using Americans to rebuild that infrastructure. Even though many Republicans actually agreed with everything he said, even though some of the Republicans actually said, hey, look, if you change these 2 or 3 things, we'll be definitely come on with you. Unfortunately, because of this political volleyball season and where political silliness takes over, when it came to the floor vote, they all backed away because they did not want to give the president a win. We in this country have to rebuild our infrastructure. We already know that. We know we have bad bridges. We know we have bad roads. Why wouldn't we use American workers who are not working to do that job? And so I think the president's plan, again, is to nation build in the United States. We've done enough nation building in Iraq. We've done enough nation building in Afghanistan. It's time for us to bring all that money back to the United States and start doing nation building within our own country.
Very good. All right, it is now,
As far as it's always the Republicans against the president, first of all, the Senate has not passed a budget in almost 3 years. So that's part of the problem. When people don't know what's going to happen because there's no budget, they don't know what's happening. And the president submitted his budget, and there did not get one single vote from a Republican or a Democrat for his budget. And so that's another indication that people are look at and are concerned about what do we do as far as hiring people, what's going to happen to us based on the budget.
well, there's a ton of questions. I haven't taken a question from the back of the room, and I think this gentleman right here. So if it's okay with our two speakers, we'll take 2 more questions.
That's fine.
Go ahead, back here.
Jamal Duran, I'm a junior political science major. Recently,
Excuse me, start again, please.
I said Jamal Duran, I'm a political science major, junior here. Recently, Mitt Romney made a comment about 47% of people who's going to vote for President Barack Obama anyway because they feel like they are victims and feel like they're entitled to health care and food and things like that. So it's not his job to worry about that group of people. I would love to hear what your opinions on that.
I got no way to do it. He was.
Well,
Check sheet here.
again, it speaks to a uninformed candidate about the 47%. 47%, if you break those numbers down, 65% of those are people who make less than $50,000 a year. 25% of them are seniors. The last 15% or so were people who just became unemployed in the last 4 years. In that 65%, if you look at the military involvement within that 65%, over 77% of all U.S. military make less than $50,000 of taxable income. So they would be so they would fall into that group as well. But outside of the numbers, again, it goes back to that same us versus them philosophy. And that's not the kind of president that we need. And I don't care who said it. Even if President Obama had said something similar, I would say the exact same thing. Is that there's enough things in this country that divide us. We should always be rallying around those things that bring us together. And it's always, again, it's that the reason why we're not an exceptional country is because of these folks. The reason why our economy is not moving forward is because of those folks. It's an old strategy, it's a plagued strategy, and it's not a strategy that your generation should ever embrace. You have the most diverse generation in the history of our country. You're the generation that on one hand, you can listen to AC/DC, on the next hand, you listen to Lil Wayne, on the next hand, I mean, you're listening to a bunch of different music, and you come together based on common beliefs. Even if somebody believes, even somebody has different music, they come from a different town, but you all have the same basic belief that everybody has an opportunity and everybody has a right. And so I was disappointed, not just because he had bad information, but because he even made the statement.
Actually, the statement reminded me of the one that President Obama made about people clinging to their guns and Bibles and whatever else. And when he said that, I was like, okay, fine. It's, he's talking to a group at a fundraiser, and I think what, in some sense, I would say Governor Romney misspoke in some areas, but what he was trying to get the point across was in a political discussion that there are a certain amount that are going to vote for Republicans, there are a certain amount that are going to vote for Democrats, and you get in the middle. The comment about people being, all wanting something for nothing, being victims. There are some who do play the victim card. I mean, truly are. Is it 47%? No. To wrap it the way it's said, I'll put it this way. I wouldn't have said it, but I wrapped both of those kind of comments in, and that was in the silly political season where you're at a fundraiser talking to people.
Very good. All right, maybe one more question. Who has been going?
Sorry, took your question. My name is Omar. I'm from Jordan. And my question goes back to the equality of opportunity issue. Where do you think the candidates really stand on social programs and how they provide that equality of opportunity?
Okay, again, I would say that the issue is that you have equality of opportunity by virtue of being in the United States. And I know people will laugh at that and say, no, you don't. I mean, I realize that some people come from lesser means than others. I grew up in a family of 5 kids and my grandmother living in a 3-bedroom house with 1 bathroom and a window air conditioner. So I didn't come from great means, but we didn't consider ourselves poor, but we worked hard for it. I think that you would find any problem with Mr. Romney saying that he thinks everybody should have equality of opportunity. But you do not necessarily, because you have equal opportunity, determine that you have equal outcome. And once I will say that's not what we're saying, but if you look at it, that is a lot of what's being said. And not necessarily from each individual candidate, but that's what's being said. You know, you're from Jordan, is that what you said, right? Now, I'm not sure what the social programs are like in Jordan and how they set that up, but there is a cost that comes with everything that you do. There is a cost that comes with everything that you do. And you have to determine what you can afford to do to provide those kinds of opportunities for equal opportunity. And giant social programs that suck a lot out of our economy, actually I think are counterproductive to doing what you say you want to do, which is to give people an opportunity. Because there's more opportunity when there's a freer society than there is when there's a more centrally controlled society.
I think the president speaks for most Americans who talk about social programs, and certainly we don't want social programs that are large and cumbersome and not effective. But we do want programs that are going to help people, particularly help people in areas where they need the most help. As a physician, I'm very, very passionate about this. In North Carolina, we have 1.8 million North Carolinians without health care at a cost of $1.8 billion, which is uncompensated care, which is paid again by tax dollars. We know very specifically that the Affordable Care Act, despite what everyone else says, will help states like North Carolina, where we have high uninsured rates. And 60% of the people, that 1.8 million, people will get up and work every single day. And so when we look at that program, we know that we can drive down the health care costs in this state, particularly for one program. Certainly I would say that has to be an economic engine, because it now makes companies, small hospitals profitable for the first time. Now, do we have problems in some of our social programs? Do they need to be redone? No doubt about it. Are there people gaming the system? Of course there are. But again, the overwhelming majority of people who need those programs are not sitting there in kindergarten saying, when I grow up, I want to be on welfare. When I grow up, I want to be on food stamps. Over a majority of Americans don't say that. And so to kind of cast this dispersion to say that these victims are down there sucking off of America, that is not true of the Americans that I see every day in my office. And I see a lot of people who work and are barely making and don't have health care. And so I think there is a place for social programs in our country. I also believe there's a place for them to be better defined, better organized, and more beneficial to American people.
Okay, well, I think that brings us to the end of our questions. I want to thank the two speakers. Let's give them a great round of applause.